Apparently, if you feel troubled, that is included in their definition of being harassed. Worried. Plagued. What the heck does plagued mean?
I thought it was a 13th century disease, but I don't know.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. The region of Waterloo is voting on whether or not to join the ranks of Canadian municipalities, including London, Ontario, and Edmonton, Alberta, by creating quote-unquote anti-harassment bylaws. We do the deep dive and discuss what that could mean for free speech in this region.
Before we get to that, help us keep this channel growing strong by hitting that like button to help push this out to more viewers. And subscribe to the channel so you're notified of our next episode. If you would like to support the channel, check out the description of this video for more details. Now let's have a listen to this interview between Waterloo City Councillor Colleen James and CBC The Morning Edition host Craig Norris.
The region of Waterloo currently has a bylaw that sets out how you can behave on regional property. Now regional councillors are looking to beef up the bylaw to prohibit hateful and harassing behavior. The change was approved during a committee meeting last week, and councillors will move to ratify it next week. Regional Councillor Colleen James joins me to explain the changes. Good morning, Councillor James.
Good morning, Craig. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Now, we already have anti-hate laws, in Canada. Why was it necessary, do you think, for the region to pass these changes to its property bylaw?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, the bylaw, the Code of Use bylaw was from 2004. So the importance and the need to change this had to do with expanding, the definition of certain prohibited activities. And I think, the work that was done with the anti-hate working group identified that there was a need to update, ensure that there was language that was current to our bylaw. So I think with all bylaws, you've had one that was almost 20 years old and things have changed, and we wanted to make sure that, we were following in line with, the Ontario Human Rights Code and language that's being used currently.
Now, the changes initially were to address harassment over race, religion, gender identity, or sexual orientation. But you added socioeconomic status and housing status to the bylaw. Talk a bit about that. Why did you want to add those?
Yeah, I think it's thinking of current time and place, it was necessary, especially given the climate we're in now, to add socioeconomic status and any discrimination as a result of income levels, where people are at, housing status in particular, that came from a member of the public who said, where does housing fall into this? Because, we do have original rent housing, and it should be included in there. And I think one of the things too, Craig, is we need to be very specific with the language. So we felt that I felt that it was the need to ensure that was added in there as well.
So this bylaw impacts regionally owned lands. What does adding that socioeconomic and housing status mean for locations like 100 Victoria Street, where there's an encampment?
Well, nobody should be subjected to harassment based on, where they are in life, and think about race, religion, and I will be honest with you, there are people who are experiencing homelessness or living rough who are as well, be it Black, racialized, and marginalized in some way, and I think it adds to in a way that humanizes as well, and socioeconomic. Again, we're dealing with people who are low income, who do have, they shouldn't be discriminated against because of that.
The amount of gaslighting going on right now is just, it's hard to even keep track. She just tried to say that, there's all of these homeless people and they're racialized people. Lady, do you know where you live? You live in Waterloo. In Waterloo, in Kitchener, in Guelph, a lot of the GTA, Hamilton, Niagara, Orangeville, like that whole area. You know the demographic of homeless people in that area? It's the color of people that has no color. It's white people. So she's trying to use this as an excuse to protect racialized people, but it's the white people that are homeless. So that's one part. Number two, you're effectively putting in legislation that allows you to decide what protests are allowed on city property and what are not.
Yeah, if you want to go protest at City Hall under these new bylaws, you're not going to be allowed to. And I wonder if they're going to apply it in both directions. If you're a left-leaning protester or if you're a right-leaning protester, I wonder who they're going to punish.
So I don't think I can bear to listen to this lady anymore. So as you've come to know us, we did do some research on this. And guess what we found? Or I should say, guess what Fox found? Fox found the bill.
I did.
So this is the section of the bill where it describes what is prohibited. So just so you don't have to read, as you're probably just listening, the new quote-unquote prohibited activity, if passed, states as follows with the additional definitions. Quote, communicating, causing, or permitting communication with any person in a way that causes the person reasonably in all the circumstances to feel harassed. Quote. So we're deciding laws based on people's feelings now, everybody. Communicating and communication includes, but is not limited to, words spoken, written, or recorded electronically or electromagnetically, or otherwise, as well as gestures, signs, or visible representations. End quote. This is unreal. Because they've essentially just described a protest, everybody. Now, the other interesting thing is electronically. So, does that apply to Facebook? Does that apply to social media? It's not on city grounds. How are you going to enforce that? So that's an interesting one. But it really sounds like all they have to do, if City Hall knows there's going to be a protest and they don't like that message of the protest, all they have to do is call one person and say, hey, would you mind showing up to counter-protest this and tell us that your feelings are hurt by what they're saying? Sure, no problem. Bylaws enacted, bylaw officers and police can be called, people removed. Protest over.
Well, I'm scared particularly about this bylaw because A, it's written extremely poorly, as you can all see, but B, it really does infringe on our rights and freedoms as Canadians, as listed in the Charter. It affects our freedom of conscience and religion, because some religions or some people may believe X and some people may believe Y. And are the people who believe X going to be offended by the people who believe Y? And are they going to be hurt? Are they going to feel harassed? Can they call bylaw? Like, this is ridiculous. It also infringes on our freedom of expression, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. Normally, you can protest on public property. That's where you're told to protest. If you show up, for example, in a mall parking lot, the mall, because they own the land, has the right to kick you out. It would be like if somebody was trying to protest in your driveway, you can kick them out. But public property, so places like sidewalks, city hall, libraries, places like that are owned publicly, you're permitted to protest there, and you're actually encouraged to choose those locations for your protest.
Yeah, and just to revisit the bill, they define harassed. Includes but isn't limited to, here's some of these comical words, troubled. Apparently, if you feel troubled, that is included in their definition of being harassed. Worried. Plagued. What the heck does plagued mean?
I thought it was a 13th century disease, but I don't know.
And we have an English term in here. Badgered. If you feel badgered, you're harassed. Here's the other interesting thing. This allegedly began as a result of a petition by the Coalition of Muslim Women, where they were concerned about Islamophobia and provided recommendations to the City Council and the Region of Waterloo. Okay? So, okay. If a group of people, like the Coalition of Muslim Women, felt that there was a significant problem with Islamophobia and they had some data to back it up and recommendations on what to do, no problem. Show us the petition. Nothing was done. Now, in May 24th of this year, the 2S LGBTQ, etc. crowd, they came up in the council. Well, all of a sudden now it's time to do something, allegedly. Now, the bill was presented on September 12th.
Of this year, so just a couple weeks ago.
Almost 1 week to the day of a certain protest that happened last week. Interesting, isn't it? And they're voting on this when, Fox?
September the 27th, which as of the time of recording is tomorrow.
Which, interestingly enough, is 1 week after a certain protest. So 1 week after this protest, they're going to be voting on a bill that would effectively make that protest illegal. Because when the counter-protesters show up, they're going to say, "I feel troubled, officer. I feel troubled." So the strength of our Constitution and our Charter of Rights relies on a weak human being that should probably be in therapy, and all they have to do is put their hand up and say, "I don't feel very good about what the mean people are saying over there."
Well, furthermore, this bylaw tries to legislate feelings. You have got to be kidding me. You know, I like to feel anyways, that I'm a strong conservative woman. And I was taught from an early age, you cannot control what other people say or do. Very important. All you can control is your reaction to it. So if somebody's saying, "Oh, you're ugly, your hair looks like straw." Okay, fine. Well, I, as the individual that is directed at, gets to choose. Do I allow that to make me feel bad? Or do I say, "You know what? I don't care about your opinion. I'm not going to listen to it."
Sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
Well, and that's it. And we're not teaching this young generation, and I think millennials too, of which I am a millennial, that we're not teaching from millennials all the way down to Gen Alpha, that we're not teaching these kids, you have control over your feelings. You have to master that, and it takes practice.
The biggest thing that concerns me about what we're not teaching the next generation is we're not teaching them resiliency. What we're teaching them is if you don't like the world and if the world is bothering you, just keep complaining and the world will bend over backwards for you.
But not just that. It's go tell an authority figure, go tell a grown-up, go tell a teacher. And now that everybody's an adult, it's go tell the government. Go rat out whoever's making you upset to the government and create these bylaws to protect your feelings because you haven't been taught how to do it yourself.
Here's the big picture, folks. So if this bylaw becomes commonplace, then it becomes very difficult to remove the current government from their position. You can't protest on public property. So other very creative ways are going to have to be enacted, which will probably lead to further legislation to block that. If you recall, we did a video a couple months ago on the NDP trying to block essentially all protests within designated events within the cities where protesters couldn't approach the event from within 100 yards.
Oh, and the online harms bill is coming, folks. We haven't talked about it yet, but it's on its way.
It's coming. It's coming. And some of you have heard about it and are justifiably concerned. So we are going to be getting to that in the coming days and weeks. So, but this is where it's going. If you lose your right to free speech, which it's being stripped away bit by bit, and if you lose your right to freedom of assembly, it's a scary place.
It's up to us to tell our government, no, you're not allowed to do that. And that may be writing your city councilor, writing your MPP or MLA, writing your MP. Again, peaceful protests, they haven't completely outlawed it in this country yet, but whatever peaceful means we have at our disposal, we need to use them to tell our government, you will not take my rights from me.
Yeah, they need to understand that this isn't a one-time irritation for a group of people, rather large group of people. This is persistent, and they need to understand that we're not going to let this fly. And they can continue down this path at their peril.
And if you live in the region of Waterloo, please email your city councilor or your mayor or whoever it happens to represent you at the municipal level and tell them exactly what you think of this.